So I want to thank everybody for taking part in today's workshop. Today's workshop is titled How to Start, Operate, Fund, and Grow a Nonprofit. Again, how to start, operate, get funding, and how to grow a nonprofit. According to Forbes, 50% of new nonprofits will fail in its first 12 months of operation. According to the National Center for Charitable Statistics, 30% of nonprofits will fail within the first 12 months. Think about that for a second. About 78% of nonprofits, especially African American nonprofits, operate on a budget of less than $500,000. Added to this, only 17% of Black nonprofits have full-time staff compared to their white counterpart, which has 3 times the paid staff. Nearly 1/3 of nonprofits operate with less than $30,000 a year. Largely made up of volunteers, 43.5% of these organizations operate with no full-time employees, and 45% have no paid or part-time employees. Think about that. Today's class focuses on how to curate plausible, fundable, sellable, bankable, and sustainable nonprofits. Let's give a little bit of information about who we are as an organization. So we are the Center for Nonprofit and Community Development, and we started in 2011. I'm one of the founders of the organization with over 35 years of experience and doing nonprofit work. I converted that skill set into training. Again, remember those numbers. Within the first year of operation, according to Forbes, within the first year of operation, a large percent of nonprofits fail. So we provide technical assistance or technical support and show the nonprofit how to strengthen, increase, and strengthen their capacity to service their clientele. We do this by focusing on creating national and best practice approaches that is both evidence-based and data-driven. This becomes the key to getting a program funding. To date, we have provided technical assistance to well over 2,500 nonprofits, government agencies, faith-based groups, businesses, and individuals. Added this to the over 330 startup nonprofits that we provided the documentation for them to get that nonprofit started. And these nonprofits are all over the United States. So, that being said, let's get started with today's presentation on how to start, how to operate, how to fund, and how to grow a nonprofit. This is one of the most comprehensive courses on the subject of nonprofit development. That being said, let me come out and let's get the class started. Again, my name is Michael Randolph, and I'm with the Center for Nonprofit and Community Development. At the bottom of the screen, you can see what's going across the screen is how to contact us. You can contact us at our email, which is Center for Nonprofit and Community at gmail.com. Or you can contact us at www.centerfornonprofitandcommunitydevelopment.com. Let's get this class started. So our mission as a nonprofit is to curate There we go. We got it up now. I was looking real hard at the screen because I couldn't make it out. So our mission as a nonprofit is to strengthen organizations that strengthen communities. We provide a comprehensive list of services that provides that one-stop center. This goes to what we talked about earlier about why so many nonprofits are failing within the first 12 months. And let me add it to that a lot of nonprofits are failing also within the first 2 to 3 years. So among the different services that we have, you see right here on the screen, anywhere from grant writing, writing business proposals, putting together fundable program and projects, and evaluation. And that list goes on, as you can see. For those of you who are taking part in tonight's live presentation, make sure you contact us to get this copy of this presentation. Again, our email is below. So this is a little bit of information about me. I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. In addition to that, I started this work in terms of nonprofit development way back in the 1980s. I started out as a community organizer, and from there I advanced to a community strategist working in poor neighborhoods throughout the United States. From there to program development, grant writer, and the list goes on. So I started the Center for Nonprofit in 2011. And I started it based on the years of experience that I had gathered over the years. And what I saw was that a lot of nonprofits were falling below the waist, and a lot of nonprofits were barely making it. We started this as an opportunity to give those nonprofits that are just getting started and operational was those nonprofits that are operational but are struggling with the skill sets necessary to be successful. The skill sets that we provide are those skills normally preserved for the elite nonprofits that's been around forever. Our training provides the average nonprofit with the skill sets to be compatible. We specialize in developing neighborhood planning and economic development initiatives in poverty stricken communities throughout the nation. Our approach to sustainability is framed around a social entrepreneurship business model. We're going to talk about that later. Earlier, we talked about we focus on creating national and best practices approaches around the United States. So we have clients that we've assisted in over 15 states. This presentation shows 10, but we've upped the scope. And it's 2024 now. We have up to 15 groups throughout the United States that we provided some type of training. And we talked about that training, holistic training earlier. This talks about some of our accomplishments. I'm honored that on LinkedIn, if you go there, you see we have over 1,000 recommendations on people that we work with throughout the years, or people that know our skill sets. This is more or less about accomplishments in terms of training that I've had over the years. Again, make sure you email me to get a copy of this PowerPoint presentation. Let's start with part one of our presentation. Part one is going to be 501c3, and the second part of the presentation is going to be on how to fund your nonprofit. So what are the learning objectives for this part of the presentation? What should you know when we end this session here? You should know what is a nonprofit, what are bylaws, what's the purpose statement, what's articles of incorporation, conflict of interest, policy, solicitation, 1023 application, all the way down to do your next level. Also, you're going to learn about what are the 3 stages of a nonprofit. So what is a nonprofit? According to IRS, a nonprofit is a tax-exempt organization that serves a public interest. There are over 29 different types of nonprofits. Today's class is going to focus on what we call a 501c3. When you are thinking about starting your nonprofit, you should be able to address 3 important topics. The first is your purpose. Why do you do what you do? The second is, what do you do? Next, you want to talk about what is your vision? What does the world look like when you're finished doing what you're doing? What is the future tense of the world? This becomes your vision. And then your mission. Based on your vision, what is your mission? How do you plan to bring about what's going on? The first documents that you put together, and again, this presentation is informational only. We don't claim to be lawyers. The first part of your preparing your paperwork to start your nonprofit is what's known as your bylaws. Your bylaws are written rules by which the organization is governed by. It consists of these elements: definition of your board, your officers, identification clause, terms of directors, etc. Your articles of incorporations is the first documents that you file to become legal. This is a formal document filed with the government body to legally document the creation of your corporation. It has and should consist of the name, duration, what's going to happen when you dissolve. All of this should be part of your um, articles of incorporation. Again, you can look at each element when I send this to you. Conflict of interest policy is required by IRS. A conflict of interest policy must avoid the appearance or actuality of private benefit to individuals who are in a position of substantial authority. Your EIN number is what gets you ready to start your organization once you go for your 501c3 status. Your EIN number, in other words, is your employee identification number. This number is given to your business. The first document that you want to file in order to get your nonprofit tax status is a 1023. Earlier, we talked about the articles of incorporation in which you file with the state. When you file that with the state, you file that for the purpose of that organization, and your state recognizes you as a nonprofit. Once you're recognized as a nonprofit, your next stage is to go and get your tax exempt status. The form that you use to complete this is your 1023. Once you get your federal exemption, then you want to travel back and get your exemption on the state level so you don't have to file sale taxes. Now, not every state has a state exemption. There's some states in which you cannot waive sale taxes, but the greater majority of them you can. Every state requires that you file what's known as the right to solicit in that state. In the state of Florida, we have what's known as the 10-100 form that you must complete. Every state has a different form number, but in the state of Florida, it's a 10-100. You can actually get penalized if you don't file this with the state. And it's called the right to solicit funds in that state. There are different stages to a nonprofit. The first stage of a nonprofit is the emerging stage. This is when you file your legal paperwork, all those documents that we talked about earlier, your articles, your bylaws, your solicitation, and those other forms that we talk about. In addition to your legal work, you also have to make sure that you're business compliant, That means you have to file your annual report every year with the state. You have to file your taxes. You have to file all of those documents that we talked about earlier every year to be in compliance. The next stage of a nonprofit is called the intermediate stage. It is during this stage that you put together your human resource development, your board training, your policies and procedures, your staff needed for the organization, and those things that's going to be critical that you need in place to take you to the next stage. A lot of individuals think you can start your nonprofit and that's it. But that's a lot of work that you have to do. So you won't become one of those nonprofits that fail within the first year of operation, or should I say the first 3 to 5 years of operation. The final stage of a nonprofit is what we call your, or what they call the final stage. Your final stage concludes putting together your organization operation, your program development, your funding development, your infrastructure, financial management and systems, marketing, public relationship, and your online presence and visibility. Keep in mind, we provide all of these different stages for nonprofits. Now, let's go to the grant. By the way, 95% of the work that we do is by providing free training to nonprofits in terms of skill sets to take your nonprofit to the next level. We are a nonprofit. So let's talk about what are the learning objectives for this next part of our presentation when we go to how to fund a nonprofit. What should you have gathered by the end of this session? You should know what are the different types of grants. You should be able to describe the different types of grantors. You should be able to know how to research. You should be able to know the fundamentals of writing a grant. You should have an understanding of how the proposal writing process takes place. You should understand what a concept, letters of intent, and letters of inquiries. And you should be able to identify grant terms and know your next level. I can't overemphasize that this is one of the most comprehensive grant development classes in the nation compared to universities and other entities that are providing the services. We, when compared to us, is the most comprehensive because we look at all of those different types of grant, both as teaching grants, and then we build one solid grant teaching machine. So let's talk about what do funders look like. This is what the funders considered when they're looking at providing you with funding. Again, this is, I can't overemphasize how many nonprofits start, how many nonprofits are struggling because they can't understand why they're not getting funding. Well, one of the things that a funder looks for is what is, they want to know what is your sustainable financial model. They want to know how is your organization different from other nonprofits. They want to know what is the hard and soft data that support your organization position of the need and other problems. They want to know what are your measurable tools that you want to use. We're going to talk about all of these when we go dive deep into the grant writing and funding proposal. They want to know what is your reason for starting your nonprofit? What value do you bring to the table? What is your value position? They want to know, are you networking, partnershiping? and doing collaboration with other nonprofits. And they want to know about your funding practice strategy. So let's start with the different types of grants. The first type is what's known as your unrestricted grant. These funds are used for general support purposes. Most grants, I would dare to say 95% of grants are what we call restricted grants. That is, it's restricted in what you can use it for, unlike the unrestricted grant, which can be used for general support purpose. Restricted grants are restricted. One type, well, the first type of restricted grant is called a program or project grant. This is used to support a specific program, usually with measurable outcome. And then you have seed grants, you have capital grants when you're trying to go for funding for land, for example, or construction. You have endowment. Normally, this is focused to college and university. Then you have challenge grants, or matching grants, and finally, what's known as in-kind support. Let's begin to talk about who are the grantors? What is the disadvantages, which is this column, and what are the disadvantages, which is this column? I'm sorry, for some reason, advantage and disadvantage didn't line up. So the first type of grantor is known as an individual. This is by far the largest amount of money that comes in is from individuals like you and I. The second type of funder is either a family or a community foundation. A family foundation means that we are all biologically connected, and a community foundation means that it's focused on a particular community. And then you have your corporate foundation. Now, by law, corporate foundation must provide at least 5% of that net proceeds uh, to charitable causes in order to maintain that status and get their subsidies from the government. Then you have the next type is a federated funds like the United Way, and then the next type is government funds, which is by far the hardest. Keep in mind, you want when you go after grants, you want to know what the advantages are, which is this column right here, and the column next to them is you want to know what are the disadvantages to going after that particular grant. So let's talk about the funders uh, who provide funding for nonprofits. Let me say that there are over 135,000 funders that fund nonprofits throughout the United States and beyond. There are two ways that you can go to find them that I've highlighted in red that I think are the two best ways. One is the Foundation Center, and the other is grant.gov. How do you increase your chances of getting that particular grant? First, you want to make sure that you read the guidelines to the grant when you go forward. You want to make sure that you talk to someone who was a past grantee that got that grant. You want to make sure that you talk to a person that was a past reviewer of that grant, and you definitely want to contact the program officer. When you go for a grant, for example, let's say Bank of America, they're going to tell you this information. Okay, let's continue. The problem. The statement of the problem. In order to get funding, you have to be able to identify what the problem is. The problem, and they call it a problem statement. Some call it something called the need statement. It specifies the conditions that you want to actually have change. You should establish the importance and significance of the problem. You should be able to state the problem and outputs in terms of human need. You should be able to indicate how the problem relates to your organization goal. And in terms of trying to gather the data necessary, you should use what we call both qualitative and quantitative research. Quantitative research is research that shows the number of something or why something is gone. Quantitative research is research that is based on objective research. For example, quantitative research will be when you type in Google, what's the number of people that face homelessness in 2023? And that number comes up. Quantitative research, another way of quantitative research is type in why are so many people homeless? So in your gathering of information, quantitative research look at the how many, why. Qualitative research, which is the next type of research, focus on the individual that's most affected by the problem at hand. Quantitative research put together focus groups and ask the individual why they think the current problem exists, as well as possible solutions. In addition to focus groups to get qualitative data, you can do interviews, you can do surveys uh, in order to get that data from individuals. So both quantitative and qualitative research is critical when you begin to ask for money. You have to show that you know what the problem is, and you have to be able to show that there your sources that support the problem. Once you have gather your data and you know what the problem is, now you're ready to design your program or to create an approach to going after funding. When we look at some of the basic concepts of putting together a grant, we're talking about goals. A goal a is really about the final impact or outcome that you wish to bring about. A strategy is a plan of action, a method, a process, or specific step taken to accomplish your goal. The objective, on the other hand, is specify your outcome of your project. It's like the end product of your project. It should be specific, immediate, measurable, practical, logical, and then you should be able to evaluate it. In other words, it should be simple. There are different types of objectives. It's when you're trying to change somebody's behavior, when you're trying to change that, create change them by create that change their performance, change their process, or create a product. All of these are different types of objectives, as you see. This is some example of goals, objectives, and strategy. Now, your method section specifies your specific activities in detail, indicating how your objectives will be accomplished. Remember, we talked earlier about the concepts. We talked about the concepts related to goals and objectives, etc. Now that we understand that, now we have to start to put together the program. Your part of your program design should include a description of how you plan to accomplish each objective. This is where you have a description of your personnel needed, staffing requirement, qualification, job description, etc. It's also during your program design or your method section that you begin to talk about a description of the facilities that you need, the equipment, and the material that you need. A description of how the program will be administered is also important. How would it coordinate with your other activities? What is the scope of activities? And can it be done within a reasonable time period? Introduction. Your introduction is an opportunity to give credibility to your organization. Um, Normally, most government proposals or applications don't require this, but most foundations and corporations do. The introduction is a credible statement that describes your professional and organizational qualification, and it establishes the significance of your idea. Conclusion. Conclusion. Every proposal should have a concluding paragraph or two. This is a good place to call attention to the future after the grant is completed. It's also during your conclusion, is when you have an opportunity to make a final appeal for your project. Unlike the rest of the grant proposal, your conclusion is when you have an opportunity to really share your emotions. Normally, when you're writing a grant, your emotions is irrelevant. All those other parts. But during the conclusion, this is when you want to appeal to your emotion. For example, a mother that has lost her child to street violence, this is when she would say, the reason why I do this is not because of a job, but because of a need to soften a pain that no other mother should feel. So you definitely want to appeal to the funder's emotion during your last paragraph in the conclusion. For example, if you're trying to save the world, when you talk about how the environment is being destroyed, and how your emotions because you want to make sure we live to be able to survive. Is another example. Now, this next part of the proposal is when you talk about how you plan to disseminate your information about your organization. You should do this by way of a project newsletter, a website, pamphlets, display at meeting, and press release. And definitely you want to use social media as a way to get out information about your organization. Social media is a new way of showing who you are and what you do. And that's what partners want to see. The appendix is where you put down documents like you want to have a reprints of articles about your organization, news articles, any definition, excuse me, of terms, any certifications that you have, a list of your board members and their titles, annual reports, organizational physical reports, past, past success stories, and letters of support. You definitely want to make sure that you get letters of support for your organization. The appearance of a nonprofit, a grant is very important. Make sure you read when you open up that grant, what is the format that they want you to stick to. For example, some grantors want you to make a list and use numbers. Some want you to use the number your pages. Some want you to use bold type. There are a number of different requirements by that particular grant term. Make sure you read the part of the grant that talks about the format. Should it be single space, double space? Evaluation. Now we come up to a very important component of the grant proposal. What does success look like? And how can we prove what success looks like? There are two major approaches that you can use in terms of showing the funder what success look like. The first is called program evaluation, and the second is known as program management, measurement. And you can read this when you get this presentation. Let's talk about the different types of evaluation. The first type of evaluation is known as a goal-based evaluation. A goal-based evaluations are evaluating the extent to which the program are meeting the predetermined goals and objectives that you set out for. For example, if you've been around 10 years, you constantly want to do a goal-based evaluation to show that are we doing what we originally said it we would do in terms of our goals and evaluation. The next type of evaluation is what's known as a outcome-based evaluation. And that's normally done by way of what's known as a logic model. A logic model basically talks about what your program is and what are your program accomplishments. When you look at this logic model here, you see it starts with what is your goal? And then it breaks down these boxes right here when you begin to break down your program. The first is what are your process objectives? That is the what. The next is the activity. How do you plan to do it? The next is who's going to be responsible. This is the who. The next is what is the expected outcome or the why. The next section is the indicator of measurements or the evidence that you plan to present to back up your program and your data source. Where can we find this information? And of course, the time measurement. How long is it going to take for your program to do what you want to do? The last type of evaluation is called a process-based evaluation. In this case, it's called a theory of change. Process-based evaluations are geared to fully understanding how a program works and how does it produce the result that it does. It's broken up into 3 columns. First is your community problem or need, the specific intervention that's going to take place in order to bring about the change, and the intended outcome that will come as a result of the intervention. The organization. Your organizational capacity is what determines whether or not you're going to be a sustainable and fundable organization. Your organization capacity deals with the why, the who, the what, the how, and the how much you need in order to operate your nonprofit. For example, why does your organization exist? Who are you? What makes your organization uniquely qualified to bring about this change? What programs do you plan to bring into play? How do you plan to implement these programs? And how much is it going to cost? In order to be sustainable, you have to have infrastructure, organizational, no, organizational infrastructure. That is, you have to have policies and procedures, staffing, funding, sustainability, physical control, access to support resources. In addition to that, you want to have a 5-year strategic plan. Before applying for major grants, you should have a plan. Let's talk about some of the most important components of a strategic plan. A strategic plan differs from a business plan in that a strategic plan shows the internal operation of an organization and it focuses on where you plan to be in the next 5 years and what you plan to do every year in order to get there. A strategic plan includes your goals, your strategies, your objectives, your tactics, your operations and methods, and your budget. The other important component to sustainability of an organization is what's known as a SWOT analyst. A SWOT analyst is a strategic planning tool used to evaluate your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats involved in a project or in a business venture. Your Fortune 500 companies do this all the time. Funders don't ask for this, but you should be able to have this as part of your documents that you file with the uh, proposal that you want to submit. Again, grants are hard to get, but not impossible if you understand the rules to the game. Don't become one of those nonprofits that within your first 3 to 5 years, you're struggling. There are core components to every strong organization. You should know what are your values. That is, what do you believe in? What is your mission? That is, why do you exist? You should know what is your vision. That is, where are you going at? You should know your strategy. That is, how will you get there? And finally, as part of your core components, you should be able to understand your tactics. That is, what will you do to get there? This should be done in long term, medium, and short term. The other components to a successful organization is having a business plan, operational plan, financial management, funding strategy. We talk about funders looking at funding sustainability. So you have to have a funding strategy, put together your risk, safety and risk management, your marketing plan and branding for your organization, your partnership, and your collaborative. I can't overemphasize on the importance of being able to market and brand your organization to make your organization sellable. Funding. How will you sustain your organization once you get that funding? What do you plan to do for funding sustainability? Here is a piece I put together that is used to show how you plan to be financially sustainable. It's called social entrepreneurship. That is the ability to fund the future of a nonprofit through a combination of earned income, charitable contributions, and public subsidies. The earned income is used to pursue your social objectives by simultaneously seeking both financial and social return on your investment. Let's look at the different parts. First part is resource, revenues, or input. That is, what grants are you bringing in? Are you doing fee for services? And you should be. Are you doing development fees? For example, if you're doing affordable housing or real estate, are you doing consulting fees? That is, you're so good at what you're doing that now you can charge other organizations, teach them what you do, and owning and operating your own business. The second part of this social entrepreneurship is program, project, or output. What are you going to do with the input of resources? Well, you can do employment program, public safety, youth program, community building, affordable housing. This list goes on and on according to your special need. Once you identify the output, now we have to talk about the next column, which is what is the outcome that you plan to bring about? For example, increasing employment opportunity, increase affordable housing, reduction of crime, whatever that outcome is going to be that you're seeking to bring about. The next part of this is known as the benefits. What's the return on investment? Well, for cities, if you're doing a grant program in the city, county, you're going to talk about increasing that tax base because you're reducing crime, for example. You're going to be talking about a reduction in the required city services. If you're doing a grant and you say, look, you have a lot of services that you don't have to use if we have our change come about. That is, if we're doing public safety and reducing the need for public safety and crime and things of that nature. For funders, you also want to show how there's going to be a reduction in risk, for the lender, person for a bank. If you get money from the bank, you can get a grant. From those people that want to invest in you, you want to show that it's going to be a high return on the investment for those that are invested in you. And then generally you want to show a better quality of life. The budget. The budget is really a project. A budget project is more than just a statement of proposed expenditures. It's an effective alternative way of expressing your project. And there are different types of costs associated with your project. The first is what's known as the direct costs. You can read this when you get this presentation. Direct costs are line items in the budget that explicit project expenditures. Indirect costs, and then cost sharing, and then in-kind costs related to that. In-kind is like pro bono type of work. So all these different types of costs is involved in your is going to be involved in your budget. Okay, so we also offer online courses in doing in-depth grant writing, anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks long for those of y'all that want to become an grant writer. As you know, grant writers can make anywhere, and these are beginning grant writers, anywhere from $50 an hour to an experienced grant writer who can charge up to $300, $400 an hour, especially when you're going after the big grants. So thank you for taking this course. I hope this has helped you. Get in contact with us if you want us to help you to start your nonprofit, to put together all of the paperwork for you to start your nonprofit. To date, in over 15 states, we provided that preparation for those nonprofits to get started. When we do our paperwork, we do it in such a way that the funders will take you more seriously. That's where we come in with our expertise in putting together wonderful nonprofits from the very start. Thanks again, and I hope this presentation does help in you getting your nonprofit started. Okay, so that being said, let's go back to the main part of this class. Every grant has to be plausible, fundable, sellable, bankable, and sustainable. Tonight, we talked about all of those different elements and putting you in a position in order to get the funding that you desire. I stated earlier that 90% of our training is free of charge. And it's done so by folks like yourself in contributing $1, $2, $5, $10 to the organization. Our cash app is $SMMIKE1, $SMMIKE1. If this workshop has been a benefit to you, hey, send us $1, send us $2, send us $10 so we can continue to provide this needed support for nonprofits. Thanks again for attending tonight's class. Please email me at Center for Nonprofit and Community at gmail.com to get a copy of this presentation. Again, email me at Center for Nonprofit and Community at gmail.com or to our website. Our website is www.Center for Nonprofit and Community Development.com. As you can see, there's a lot to putting a nonprofit together. What we do is to work with you and spoon-fed feed you so you can have the ability to be a sustainable nonprofit and create your own salary and start your own nonprofit to do the work that you love. Nonprofits can make nonprofit employees, especially the CEO, every nonprofit can make upward to $100,000 if you have the skill sets so your nonprofit can be successful. Please contact us if you just start your nonprofit or if you want to grow your nonprofit. And again, I hope tonight's presentation helps you in taking you to the next level. I always say nonprofit rocks because they do. Without you doing what you're doing, change don't come about in our society. Nonprofits are ordinary people that are doing extraordinary things throughout the United States. Ordinary people that's doing extraordinary things. I hope this presentation really helps you, and I hope you're one of those individuals, be it an organization or an individual that's ordinary, but you want to do extraordinary things.